Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. When the mask comes off, it's all over. The corporations, the governments, and the banks, the lords, spiritual and temporal, as well as your county courts, as well as the county coroner, are all administering and relying upon you to wear a mask. That mask, ladies and gentlemen, is called a persona. Anybody that is wearing a persona is automatically called an actor. Actors wear personas. Acting, because people do not know they are acting and they are personas, and using words like individuals, human, etc., are not aware that the mask that they are wearing and the names that pertain to it, i.e., the variant spelling names that they allocate to these masks, which you can check by the letters that come through your letterbox, not one of them resembles the name that you opened the account with, whether that's a energy bill, bank account, or anything like that. It's all written in a variant way of how you originally wrote that name or opened the account with, including any solicitors, any lawyers that you hired. These variant spelling names are part of a system known as persons, personnels, individuals. This is all corporate language. So important is to the world of fiction that they keep you in a state of a masked man or a woman, that when you take up that name, that attitude, that fashion, that housing, that mortgage, that credit card, that bank account, they are essentially taking custody of it and administering your affairs, which I have brought to a stop insofar as that you people now need to be educated. The Crown copyright is now in my custody. The Corona, albeit the Crown, is now yours freely to take up. But you need to have the knowledge. And the reason why that I have put the face of so-called Tutankhamun on the thumbnail of the video is because that in itself is a persona. They are getting you to believe through fraudulent means that for you to have a mask, a persona, is more better than having your own DNA unique face of yourself. So hence you are given signatures, hence you are given handles, pen names, pseudonyms, personas, and they are run by a department called personnel. It is worth quite literally trillions upon trillions of dollars per month of your sweat commercial energy. And they are also being administered through what's known as Lord Spiritual and Temporal until I brought it to a stop. As long as you believe that it is better for you to act like an actor, like, for example, Snoop Doggy Dogg, I'm sorry I've forgotten his name, you will not be able to comprehend the true value of yourself because you are acting out the life of somebody else. So important is it to these people, these banks that sold you mortgages and debt pledge, which are all done on the back of you having a persona, an alternative character, an alternative personality, a split personality, is so they can hack into your fabric, into the fabric of who you are, to sell you these fraudulent instruments called mortgage, debt, etc. So this is why you have so many superstars, A-listers, songsters, and so on and so forth, that has more to do with the cult of personalities. Personalities also comes from persona. That you would rather take up that persona than your own face. In other words, you would rather decorate yourself and mimic one of those songsters or actresses or actors to look like them. And your entire fashion industry, music industry works on that. In fact, the list is so great, it'll take me half a day just to reel it off. But essentially, virtually everything in your society runs on the back of you not ever being yourself. And that is for the purposes of selling you death pledges and putting you into debt, because a persona cannot really administer your own affairs. My Tricks and Traps student universities have control over those things because they've been taught it. Now, how many of yous psychologically would rather take up Tutankhamun's mask made out of gold rather than you wear your own mask, wear your own face, as it were, own your own face? How many of yous would do that? Well, this is what you're dealing with, because if the answer is yes, you've entered the world of the legal fiction. It's a fiction. Fiction quite literally means it's a shadow, like shadow government, like shadow prime minister, like shadow chancellor, which are all governmental bodies in your face. How many of yous would like to be George Clooney? That's an actor. You don't know who George Clooney is. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm saying to you is that the mask that your society is wearing at the moment, which is being pivotal on the mask that you wear on Corona, COVID, etc., quite literally the surgeon's mask that you wear, is representative of the mask that you are essentially wearing by picking up those 101 pseudonyms through your letterbox. In doing so, the idea that it is better and more pleasable for you to live your life outside of yourself and acquire somebody else's persona is so sought after, it has a premium on it. Hence the model's paycheck, as it were, represents the value of their persona, which is sold to you, like the value of a mortgage or debt pledge that is sold to you. In other words, previously, until I broke the codes and shared it with the entire world, the county coroner was administering whether you was able to think logically, have the patience and understanding to know the difference between you and an actor that you may act upon. The people that you think you know, you do not. The public figures in your life, whether they're actors, models, singers, politicians, they are all public actors. They are just acting to be political, while the bureaucracy, which is the true name for a government, runs your affairs without you ever knowing. The reason why I'm going to such great lengths to explain this to you is because in order to take possession and make your corona yours, your own, rather than a fiction like a thorny crown as opposed to the glory that glows off of your head, is what stops you from taking possession of that which is already been yours. I am preparing the way as the 13th of the 13th month, as the Federal Postal Court judge and plenipotentiary judge, which is the educator, to prepare the world for the full birthing of every nation to take back their crown. Your religions, ladies and gentlemen, whether you like it or not, will just simply wither away and replaced by something much, much more factual, which is called a faith. When I broke the code on the mythological gods not being mythological, but this is how they've hidden themselves, when I revealed that your so-called mythological gods are not mythological, but actually they exist because I got their bank accounts, which can be found on their website, it put a hole in their world. You see, when you expose or reveal the magician's trick, that magician cannot perform that trick anymore. But because they are, by their very nature, magical, mystical, mystification, magisterial, magistrates, they will try to come up with variations of that same trick. But the trick is a trick, and a variation is still only a variation. Break the code, and they cannot play that trick on you by me educating you. So when I told you folks that your mythological gods, whether it's Hindu, Greece, Latin gods, or any one of these things, are just men and women with bank accounts, I put a big hole in their vessel. And that hole, ladies and gentlemen, is the same hole that I'm putting into the county coroners of the world that were appointed by the Crown Corporation. Full stop. I hope that I have explained myself clear enough and concise enough to let you know the only thing that is stopping you from picking up your own corona, your own glory, as it were, is the mask that you wear, whether that be the surgical mask or the alternative personality that was given to you. I will now name some individuals that might be of some use to you. Sigmund Freud impregnated the Commonwealth to say, or the Commonwealth nations under the Crown, to get you to believe that you have an alternative personality and an ego. And in doing so and trying to convince human beings that such a thing exists, they bought into it. Just as you believe the Queen is the Queen, just as you believe the crown is just nothing more than gold with diamond crusted around it. It represents yourself, which they're administering. And in doing so, because he successfully convinced everybody there is an id, people took up that idea and began to create alternative characters of themselves, what African people call cariculture. Cariculture is the variant ways that you can become a cartoon in a Walt Disney movie. Now that they successfully sold that idea, they were now able to sell you what is called an id, which is called also an ID. Therefore, you are now forced to get an ID because that controls your persona, called a passport, driving license, or be it your photo ID, which is only a facsimile of you. Do you understand what I'm saying? In order for the ID to work, they had to sell you the idea that you have an id. And when you bought into the id, they now sold you successfully the ID, which is also another word for id. You understand that? And all manner of vulgar, disgusting things were able to penetrate your mind on the back of this pseudonym called Sigmund Freud, which is also a legal fiction. Full stop. I will now give you another example. Sorry, let me continue with that example. So every time you talk about sexual psychosis or anything like that, you are essentially buying into another fiction and living out that religion. It has no science, ladies and gentlemen, no science whatsoever. It is the confabulation of a twisted mind to engineer and twist your world. So every time you use examples from Freud, you are essentially buying yourself into that id. And the ideas that you have are part of it, hence the vaccines. The vaccine mandate is about vaccinating your persona. Get rid of your persona and there is no vaccine mandate. You understand this. Get rid of your persona, there is no ID. There is you and the uniqueness of you. You understand this. We have also famous writers like Nietzsche, who's also a legal fiction, who had a very twisted mind, and his twists are very well recorded. And on the back of that twisted mind, your academics and your scholastic masturbators will get you to believe that there is great insight into this thing called Nietzsche. Hence, you are talked out of your ability to become man or woman, or talk you out of being a man or a woman and pick up another alternative characteristics. Hence, that word, which is also part and fed into the Freudian fraud, is that of Superman, man and Superman. You see, they're using mirrors on you. They're getting images of you through a mirror, and they're saying that is actually your true self in the mirror. And that true mirror self has to now become to Superman status, called an inflated ego. So you people out there have bought into the idea that it is better to become a Superman and do superhuman things and supermanly things as opposed to just being a man. Because the power of a man with an autograph and a creator's seal called your thumbprint can govern his affairs and sack any government officials, put any banker to arrest, which is the things that I am now starting to carry on doing. I have now named 2 individual mechanisms in your world that robs you of your ability to be a man, by thinking that the only way that you can become a man and fulfill yourself as a man or a woman is to acquire an alternative ego, to acquire an inflated personality or character, to acquire a caddy culture, what they call cartooning, in order to become superhuman status. Status, which is another word for statues. Hence, you are signed statuettes of law, as it were. That is 2 examples. Let me see if I can find you another one. How many of yous have... Give me a moment to think, ladies and gentlemen, while I gather my thoughts. How many of yous have been successfully convinced that Nelson Mandela that Gandhi out of India, that J.F. Kennedy out of the United States of America or Washington, D.C., actually were incredible men, including another one called Martin Luther King. How many of you were successfully convinced that they are the salvation to your rights, as it were, and that they are doing wonderful things for you? Ladies and gentlemen, if the answer is yes with any one of them or all of them, you have been effectively hypnotized. You have effectively been lied to. That lie took you out of being a man or a woman, and then follow what is known as hero worship. If you worship a hero, you have fallen for the trick. Hero, ladies and gentlemen, is just another word for heroine. Heroine wasn't named after a hero. Heroine has always had the characteristics of their hero. The word hero comes from the word heroine, not the other way around. It is a subjugator, hero worship. It is also, and sorry about my failing words here, I'm just trying to think up what's the correct way of explaining myself. You see, the profitability to these crown operatives and these legal fictions is that they can live on your sweat equity, your commercial energy, which is quite literally your life. Because if you've worked 25 years for a mortgage, they still own the house. They essentially stole 25 years of your life. Whereas that life is the property and the rights of your babies, your masters. That's what they're called when they're still below the age of 14, not children. The means and the bureaucratic mechanism of how that is done is the task that I've been trusted with to teach my students through the tricks and traps, as well as educate you as best as I can through this university broadcast. University means one verse, and I'm on a geometric level playing field with you, eye to eye, hand to hand, under the penalty of perjury, which means that I stand under the penalty of perjury. What does that mean? It means to tell the truth. Truth stands above me. Truth means 3 contracts, like Father, Son, Holy Ghost, the 3 wise men, and etc. I also stand with the fact in hand and with my oath at hand. When anybody that is speaking in the public has not done this as I am, is an actor. I am not an actor. I am one fact speaking to another fact. And if my message has got through, then the journey of you being successfully birthed with little or no teething problems in this corona period has taken place, and I have done my job. For those people that require further education, I would suggest that you read my website, look at my website, and most importantly, watch my YouTube presentations. In doing so, you now prepared for David Wayne Miller's videos. Full stop. Give me 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. Give me 1 second. I'm going to try to explain something else to you. But in order to do that, I just need to do some research. Okay, that is that. I've given you Nietzsche Freud, and there are quite literally thousands of others. I will now come on to the element of evolution. You see, every time you pick up one of their analogies, it's like you picking up their Bible. Yeah, it's like you picking up King James's Bible, both of them. They're both copyrighted to the Crown. I'll paraphrase that. God spoke to me in a revelation, and in doing so I wrote it down. But instead of saying and crediting it to God, I now copyright it to a fiction organization calling itself the Crown. Do you understand what I'm saying? Obviously, it cannot be the Word of God in whatever format you may think God is. So whenever you pick up these words and these hero worships, you are essentially picking up their own booklets, which are called contracts, and you are verbalizing, called a verbal contract, into that contract without actually knowing. The most beautiful example I can think of that is God Save the Queen and the fascist regime. Out of your own mouth, you have said, God Save the Queen. And then you have said, and the fascist regime. You have asked God, in whatever format it is, to save the Queen and the regime, the fascist regime. The people that come up with these things are extremely toxic in your world, and their toxicity can only be understood by the aftermath of what they have done. So is any one of you better for following and hero worshipping Martin Luther King? Is any Indian man or woman better off by following Gandhi, which was another Crown operative? He was actually a member of the Inner Temple, outer city of London. Is any one of you in South Africa better off because of Nelson Mandela? Is any one of you wiser, more educated, vaccine-free, mortgage-free, free of secret societies, free of an industrial military complex because of J.F. Kennedy, which is also a legal fiction? Are any one of you better off for that? Is any one of you better off and fitter, stronger for electing Arnold Schwarzenegger as mayor of California or governor of California? Are you any better off from it, you Californians? So you Californians out there, are you any better off for that? I think you know the answer already, because you picked up something that you did not understand because it looked good. So you thought if it looks good, it must taste good. If it tastes good, you might as well take a bite of it and swallow it. And hence, you are now in this position that you find yourself in. I will now come to another example of that level of toxicity that takes place. You know Charles Darwin, which is a legal fiction. He created the concept, the ideology, the theory of evolution. So when any of you professors, theorists, evolutionists, people with faith, without faith, society members, when you ever pick up his analogies, you have essentially bought yourself into the lie, i.e., survival of the fittest, which he never, by the way, said. You have bought yourself into the idea that your descendants is not you, that it's not actually within the genetic code. You have bought into the idea that you was once somebody else before you got to this stage. In other words, you had an alternative creation. You had an alternative genetic resemblance. The theory of evolution, ladies and gentlemen, is that it's a theory. Now comes the more shocking bits. As I explained to you, when you pick up Tutankhamun's face mask that you believe is thousands of years old in the era of Tutankhamun, that is not true. That mask, ladies and gentlemen, was manufactured. It was manufactured only recently, probably about 100 years ago, and it was sold to you that these are the masks that you must also inherit, that your ancestors from Egyptian descendancy wore masks, makeup, and etc. Like, for example, that wonderful movie called The Ten Commandments. These engineering, ladies and gentlemen, is all there to rob you of your standing called a man and a woman. The language is so toxified, even I find it difficult not to use the word person, those persons. And I know fully well what that word means and the toxic consequences that it has on me as well as the listeners. Because these toxic words have become so free-flowing, we're actually vomiting blood when we speak them, because the Elizabeth II and all of these principalities live on that blood. You see, so when you speak of examples of Darwinian philosophies, like justifying your position in society as being the survival of the fittest, which you're not. That's why the Canadians are being smashed, as it were. The Australians are being demoralized. The Irish are being demoralized. Obviously, you are not in possession of your genie. Obviously, your descendancy of the mass and your evolutionary stance has not even took place. You don't have the strength or the navigational skills of the so-called monkeys that you supposed to have descended from, albeit the apes. You don't even have the intelligence of a single-cell organism to be able to protect itself from people kicking your door down and trying to vaccinate you. But as long as you use these examples, that it has this evolutionary explanation, you have just justified to yourself the reason why you have to be something historical, like something from your evolutionary history, as it were, as to opposed to what you are now. Full stop. Hopefully I have explained to you using these 4 examples, and I'm willing to share another one with you, that how incredibly toxic it is to lend on other people's ideology which is not qualified. For those people that wants to have a little journey on how these sciences, so-called sciences, work, read Bill Bryson's book. I think it's called All and Everything. I've forgotten the name of the book, but Bill Bryson's is about that thick, and it describes the fraud that takes place. He puts it in incredible comical explanation. I just love the book. That's that. Now comes the other sentence. And remember, I am putting my word online. I am putting myself online on this. I try to find people that have actually seen genuine fossils of dinosaurs and various descendants of man. I'm just looking for dinosaur bones that people have built an entire educational system on. I'm looking for evidence of skulls that are supposed to be found, the original one, and who has them and who has seen them. Do you know what the results are, ladies and gentlemen? They're coming up 0. I have to kind of swallow, because I loved all that stories. I loved the dinosaurs in the History Museum in London, Natural History Museum. I'm having difficulty finding anybody that can actually qualify and witness testimony on oath that this is a dinosaur bone, a genuine dinosaur bone, or any descendants of man. I can't find any Neolithic man. What I do have is a lot of cartooning, like simple stock frame pictures that show you descendants of man from apiary creatures to Homo sapiens as we stand. Certainly I've seen examples of adaptation, but that is not evolution. You see, what I'm saying to you, ladies and gentlemen, you are given the means through evolution to justify your place to cannibalize on your own fellow man and women. Because most people require a reason to do what they do. Without that, it becomes meaningless. So when the stock market holders, the banksters, the low-key workers, the mid-key workers, even the high-key workers like the billionaires, the millionaires, are cannibalizing on men and women, they are justifying it by the principles of evolution, which itself is actually non-existent. Just like the use of an id, just like Nietzsche, Man and Superman. You see, in order to crack this code, I had to spend virtually all of my life virtually studying anything that comes into my possession and having a greater understanding of it. And I quite literally mean an understanding of it, not this fictional word called an overstanding. I had to quite literally stand under these things and realize the fraud, to be able to now squash it in its stance. You see, your entire economic system is built upon a principle called survival of the fittest, that it is acceptable to cannibalize, to practice cannibalism on your fellow man and woman. And people like Warren Buffett, these other legal fictions, are selling you the idea because they're cannibalizing on you. With my hand on my heart, with my oath in hand on a geometric level playing field, these legal fictions have no meaning. They are bums, what you Americans call bums. They are just masquerading, and the word quite literally is masking. They are masking themselves for what they really are. Just as that legal fiction, that fiction thing, calling itself Richard Branson, that so perniciously sold that horrible song through the Sex Pistols, which were middle-class men pretending to be homeless, living in mansions with swimming pools in England. Their toxicity has an incredible destructive force on this planet. Full stop. I will now give you another modern day myth of how much you people are hero worshipping and taking on board those people that you see on telly, those people that you see in the newspapers, which are all called artifacts, called articles. They are artistry. And the world that you are worshipping in, which I am now responsible from waking you from, is what's keeping you in this servituded manner. Human beings have invested quite literally their entire life believing a lie. So as a result, I understand that there will be resistance to say that your religion doesn't exist. That there would be a resistance to say Nietzsche, Sigmund Freud, and these other people that I have mentioned are just bums. How many of you have listened to a man called William Henry Gates III and what he had to say about world affairs? How many of you have actually been educated by a man called William Henry Gates III? How many of you have been educated by him or benefited by him? Anybody? What's the answer? I'll leave it up to you. How many people on this planet have successfully convinced themselves that Bill Gates is the owner of something called Microsoft? How many of you have successfully projected your, shall we say, frustration, anger at Bill Gates because you believed him to be what he says he is as an actor? How many views? 1 million, 2, 3 billion? That is how successful William Henry Gates III is in convincing you of a creature called Bill Gates. That is like me acting like a Martian. So Mark hyphen Kishon, Christopher with a full stop at the end, wearing a Martian's uniform, that's a bad word, a Martian's mask, has convinced you successfully that I am the Martian, and that this Martian is one that owns the Federal Postal Court. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? You've understood. Let me just simply show you, and I don't want to spend too much time on it. This is what that is. How many of you have listened to any broadcast from this man and have been listening to a legal acting fiction called Bill Gates? Yeah. This man here, when's the last time you ever heard him say anything? Who is the owner? Who is the owner of Microsoft? Yeah, look at it. Read up and understand what you're up against. Bill Gates, with that face, owns Microsoft. And yet his father was called Bill Gates. I think that's what it says here. Yeah, his father was Bill Gates. And his company is called Bill Gates. Has it ever occurred to you as a alternative way of thinking, a more investigative, let me come out of full screen, of a more investigative perspective to be able to think, hey, is this guy that I'm familiar with as a face called Bill Gates, is he the actor for a company called Microsoft? Could it possibly be that the private men and women that you know nothing about because they're private hire actors in public to put out their policies and convince the general public that's how it should be, called politicians? How many of you genuinely believed a man called Bill Gates is the villain in your society and the owner of Microsoft? You understand the fraud, ladies and gentlemen. It's vast, It is vast in its scale. Vast. Full stop. Now, that's the end of the presentation. This next element is the things that I need to happen for myself as well as other people. One of them is that I need somebody out there that is in the correct volition of the thinking to be able to narrate for me, whether it's synthetically, but of a good quality, the book called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. Yeah, I need you guys to narrate it, whether it's verbally or by computer. But if you can do that to me and deliver it to me as a standard enough for people to be able to be cognizant of by listening to it. If you was to verbally narrate it like a voice-over actor could, or do it synthetically through a computer called synthesis, I'm happy to accept it as long as it is of good quality. And that book can be found online as a PDF, which you can copy and paste, or you can just download and your computer will be able to read it. But it has to be of a good quality. I would prefer a masculine voice, a feminine voice, and I would like to share it with the rest of the world for people that follow me with other YouTube channels. Because you need to know the manner of the silent weapon for these quiet wars that have been conducted on mankind and womankind for a very long period. In fact, so long you have got used to it. Full stop. The second element is that I need a biographer, preferably a biographer that I can have a face-to-face to be able to put what I have to say on paper or print. And I expect you to be qualified, as it were. Qualified insofar as that you can be a biographer. I am in need of that because I cannot and I do not have the time, unfortunately, to go look for it myself. Yeah, so if you are a biographer or you have the capacity to do so, to put my thoughts on paper, that's more than welcome. And you will be paid for it because I pay people. For those people that want to do the silent weapons for quiet wars, if I like it, and if I like 5 or 6 versions of it, I'll pay you for it. And you email me and I'll tell you how much I will pay you for it. Same with the biographer. Full stop. I'm also looking for a cartoonist, hand cartoonist, to be able to cartoon and narrate the things that I have said in a cartoon fashion. You know, the idea is a picture speaks 1,000 words. Okay? So if somebody out there that wants, a job, as it were, to be a cartoonist for me, you must start the project and finish it. Don't think that you can fool me around. You will not be able to. Okay? Email me and I will talk to you and then we can go forward. Full stop. The other element is that I will be holding training program. I'll be holding a training program for the Federal Postal Court and new recruits as of end of March. And it'll culminate through a proprietary work for everybody to come together at the end or at the beginning of September. So end of September and at the beginning of October. Okay. And that is open, especially for my Tricks and Traps students. Full stop. And anybody that has the calling can email me and you'll be interviewed. Make sure you have the funds for it. Make sure you have the integrity for it. Otherwise, don't bore me with anything else. This other announcement I should have actually released on my broadcast, But essentially, I need services, what they call service processors, to be able to go and knock on the doors of men and women, of the bankers, as well as the debt collectors, and all of those people that have done ill. You have the right to be able to service process them. Okay? And those people that want that training can come to me, including the Canadians, and I can give you that how that process works. Okay? Full stop. In other words, you'll be put in a position where you can go service people at their own doorstep, because you have the right to service anybody on this planet in any location for any things that you want summons to. In other words, these fictional puny judges as well. Nobody is immune, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody is immune. Full stop. Now, this next information is also of great importance, is that I've been monitoring PayPal for the last few days, and its share prices are fluctuating crazily, to the point that I no longer feel safe doing anything with PayPal. As a result, in the next day or two, I will have nothing to do with them. Their share prices was hovering around about 300 just at the start of the lockdown, and then it started plummeting when people came out of lockdown. And also it has been announced that they have seized or held 4.5 million accounts. This sounds like a seizure, ladies and gentlemen, okay, because PayPal is a bank. So I'm letting people know this is my position on it. I have no trust in the banks because they have broken trust, and PayPal itself is a bank. Just a question, ladies and gentlemen. If you was the true owner of PayPal, would you hire an actor to pretend that you are the CEO of PayPal while secretly you know you are? That's part of public relations, and this particular man goes all around the world claiming this and that. If you was a car manufacturer, would you do the same thing? Because you don't have time to go and publicize yourself about what you're doing and your technologies, but would rather buy an actor, or even vice versa. In other words, when the true owner goes out, there is another person, another man or woman running the entire company. You see, the point that I'm making is that any one of these people that is not using their factual name are all actors. They are deliberately misleading you. And the quantity of that style that they use is so multitudinal, it is unfathomable. Full stop. There is something that I need to leave you with, and I'm going to make you and force you to understand this. You see, you, the people on this planet, are actually the creditors to the entire infrastructure around you, including the principalities, your governments, your corporations, the Securities and Exchange Commission, which are exchanging your securities. That's what it means. You've commissioned them to exchange your securities. That's why they are so fraudulent with it and so carefree. You have to now know that the debtor, which is the corporations, the principalities, know that they owe you credit. Because of this and the pernicious nature of these creditors, of these debtors, of these debtors, is they now look upon you, the people of the world, as being the enemy. The enemy of the debtor is the creditor. And the quicker they kill you off, the less they have to pay you off. You understand? So I'll paraphrase it. If I owe you £1 million, I'm debted to the creditor. And if I have the money to pay it off, then I am debted. And since I don't want to pay it off, I might think of you as the enemy and do very pernicious things to you. Poison you in all manner of ways, either in warfare, called silent weapons for quiet wars, albeit through vaccination programs, through what is known as pharmaceutical, which means maker of what? What does pharmaceutical mean? It means maker of poisons and potions. And the method of this can go into the food of destroying people and into the water supply. Look, it's everywhere, ladies and gentlemen, because you are the creditor. So understand the creditor must be educated that the debtor that is able to pay you back is an enemy. It is there to hurt you. And as a result, you need to know that you are being predated upon. You are being predated upon. It's time for you to wake up. Thank you very much for listening to me. Until next time, bye-bye.